This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Christopher Mitchell, 212th Trooper, Sylar 1610, Carmen CJ, Rune Scribble, Legendary Ray Ray Ash, and Kitsu the Kitsune. Eyes glistening at Shadow's challenge, Sonic grins that he's more than up to the task. Just tell him what to do. Though, this just earns him a shake of the head, as Shadow states that won't work, both because Chaos Control can't be taught like something from a book, and because Sonic has always been better at learning by doing. So the best course of action is to get a hold of a second Chaos Emerald and practice that way. Eagerly, the blue blur asks if Shadow thinks there's another emerald on this island, to which the black and red speedster nods that by using the Chaos energy from the emerald they have as a baseline, he can vaguely sense several more similar energy signals, with one being not too far from here. Grinningly growing now, Sonic asks what they're waiting for then, earning him a slight scowl as Shadow tersely repeats that he can only vaguely sense the other emeralds, so they'll need to do some searching before they know where exactly they need to go. Having learned to respect his companion's methodical nature even if he doesn't always think the same way, Sonic suggests they should at least start heading in the general direction of the other Chaos Emeralds, with Shadow agreeing this is perhaps for the best as they set off in an eastern direction not terribly dissimilar from where Robotnik's Eggmobile vanished from view. For a time, the pair are simply met with more hills and plains, though as they get further inland, these plains start becoming littered with broken marble structures like the remnants of some ancient civilization. Not only that, but streams of lava soon begin cropping up, though thankfully Sonic and Shadow are fast enough to jump these, making them a minor impediment at most, even if they occasionally need to pick up speed so that a rogue fireball from the streams doesn't catch them. However, these are not the most notable features of this new area, as after a while they come across a large temple descending deep underground, with Shadow surmising this must have been built to protect the emerald, as he thinks they'll need to pass through and come out the other side if they want to obtain it. Shrugging nonchalantly, Sonic smirks that he'll just speed on through, though this is a grave misapprehension, as it seems this place was specifically designed to limit momentum with its many starts and stops, sudden drops, reversals, and worst of all, long rivers of lava that cannot be jumped, and must instead be traversed by small floating heat-resistant blocks. Naturally, such a place is Sonic's nightmare, with Shadow snarkily suggesting that maybe this temple is designed as a test of patience, though admittedly, he doesn't like the forced reduction in pace any more than the younger hedgehog does. As a result, the appearance of more Robotnik robots is almost a welcome sight since it gives them something to do, even if it is trickier to fight them in the temple's narrow corridors. Figuring this would be good practice for Sonic, Shadow for the most part hangs back, letting him handle the badniks in a showing of what he has learned. For the most part, the blue blur acquits himself admirably, though whenever it seems that he may be in genuine danger, usually due to running too far ahead and not being aware of what's behind him, Shadow does step in, destroying the threat or pulling him out of the way of stray fireballs and spikes, before sternly pointing out what his young ward did wrong. Thanks to this, they do manage to eventually make it through and emerge at the other side where a Chaos Emerald is indeed waiting for them on a large plinth. Unfortunately, it seems they are not the only ones who want it, as Robotnik soon floats into view, having apparently given his Eggmobile an upgrade in the intervening hours, as now its wrecking ball has been replaced with a fireball launcher. Cackling maniacally, the not-so-good Dr. leers that now these rodents are in for it, as with his Egg Scorcher he will do away with them once and for all, or at least he tries to, as halfway through the sentence he is interrupted by a cry of
Chaos Control!
In a flash, Shadow appears in front of Robotnik despite having been on the ground an instant earlier, before delivering an aerial roundhouse kick to his face. However, it seems he is not done, as with a second utterance of that phrase, he is gone again, now appearing below the Eggmobile, where he has little difficulty ripping out the new fireball cannon and tossing it to Sonic, who lazily spins it on his finger, evidently enjoying the show. Then, just to make sure the message has really sunk in, Shadow repeats the words for a third and final time, with him now materializing directly above the mustachioed madman to strike him with a bicycle kick that has him howling in pain. Seeing that he's outclassed, Robotnik makes the smart choice and activates the Eggmobile's windshield to protect himself from further attacks, before turning and flying away rather than having his craft grounded once again. Though as he goes, he loudly vows that next time they meet he'll get both those hedgehogs. Surprisingly, this is met by no reaction from Shadow, with this striking Sonic as so odd that he asks his companion if they're gonna go after the Doc or not, since they've got him on the ropes, so they can finish him here and now if they act fast enough. Though, it seems Shadow is intent on surprising Sonic today, as in a calm but firm voice, he replies there'd be no point, and orders the other hedgehog to stay, since they've got training to do now that they have the pair of Chaos Emeralds they need. While Sonic doesn't much like the idea of letting Robotnik get away, the allure of learning Chaos Control is enough to sway him, particularly after that awesome demonstration. Having figured this would whet Sonic's appetite, Shadow gets down to work teaching the boy how to harness Chaos energy, and while his struggles as a teacher still remain, since this isn't something he was taught and so knows how to relay, Sonic's genius for anything to do with his body prevails, as just from observing Shadow do it, he's able to replicate Chaos Control without much issue once he has an emerald in hand. Truthfully, Shadow is impressed, as while he was certain Sonic would be able to get the hang of this eventually, he had not expected it to be so soon, with this serving as further proof that the younger hedgehog is a prodigy, who in some regards can even challenge his status as the ultimate life form. Of course, Shadow would never tell him this, as the last thing that brat needs is to have his overconfidence validated, both because it would make him even more insufferable, and because it could pose a genuine risk to his safety if he gets too cocky. Though all the same, he does acknowledge that this was good, and that Sonic should be proud, before demanding he keep practicing to prove it wasn't a fluke. Scoffing that he'll make Shadow sorry he ever suggested such a thing, the Blue Blur diligently continues his practice, using Chaos Control to teleport around like Shadow had, with the Elder Hedgehog calling this Chaos Snap, as well as to slow time so that he can easily parry and dodge a flurry of high-speed blows Shadow throws at him. Due to the black and red hedgehog being a hard taskmaster, this training continues for several hours, with him demanding more intense practice every time Sonic assures him that he's got this. To the youthful speedster's credit, it truly does seem that he has the hang of these new abilities, as when Shadow has them spar while using Chaos Control, Sonic is able to employ the power almost as proficiently as his teacher despite being a novice. Unfortunately, before the Blue Blur can progress any further, his training is interrupted by the unwelcome return of Dr. Robotnik. Like their last two run-ins, he is aboard his Eggmobile, though this time he has not felt the need to upgrade it, instead proudly showing off what he's done with his time away, gather 4 more Chaos Emeralds. He then haughtily declares that it's over for the pair of rodents, as he has twice the emeralds they do, so now he'll combine their power to unleash a quad Chaos Control upon them. For a moment, Sonic and Shadow are frozen in place, not even taking up battle stances, with the Doctor gleefully believing he's done it, only for it to be revealed that the pair had been waiting for something to happen in the wake of his bombastic claim. Now that it is clear nothing is going to happen, Shadow snarls that the human is an imbecile with no understanding of the power he's trying to misuse, before instructing Sonic to show this fool what true Chaos Control looks like. Giving his teacher a flippant half salute, the Blue Hedgehog then activates the power of his emerald, appearing just as Shadow did directly above Robotnik, though unlike him, he does not settle for a simple kick, instead mockingly running in place atop Robotnik's bald head before turning and kicking the other emeralds right out of his hands. Not needing to be told, Shadow uses this opportunity to pull off a volley of Chaos Snaps in quick succession, so that he's able to catch the gems before they hit the ground. While grinning broadly, Sonic calls this a pretty sweet move. However, while he thinks his new power is awesome, nothing beats the feeling of good old-fashioned speed. To prove this, he then curls into a ball and begins rolling across the Eggmobile in different directions, all the while battering Robotnik with his spin dashes. This also manages to do some serious damage to the bubble car, so that before long, it looks just about ready to go boom. Having been waiting for this, Sonic employs Chaos Control one last time, teleporting himself higher into the air than he ever could have jumped, before diving downwards in a devastating drop dash that tears the bottom out of the Eggmobile and sends it spinning off into the distance. Uncurling so he can stand beside Shadow, the Blue Blur smirks that Robotnik wasn't that tough after all, though in that moment, the ultimate life form barely pays him any heed, as he has other matters on his mind. Spotting Shadow's furrowed brow, Sonic asks what's wrong. Did something happen to the emeralds? Though shaking his head, the black and red hedgehog bluntly replies they're fine, but there's only 6 of them. Remembering how Shadow had said there were meant to be 7, the younger speedster questions if the other one's still here on the island somewhere, though this is just met with a shake of his mentor's head, as Shadow states that he can't sense the last Chaos Emerald, which must mean it's somewhere far away, though even so, they need to find it to prevent humans such as the Doctor from getting their hands on it. With this settled, the two hedgehogs divvy up the emeralds they do have and depart South Island to begin searching the surrounding archipelago, though this is all for naught, as no matter where they go, Shadow cannot sense anything that could give them a lead. However, this is not to say they find nothing, as while passing by Never Lake they discover 2 things. First, a young pink hedgehog who immediately starts giggling something about having never imagined 2 princes, and secondly, a large mace that has Robotnik's face carved into it, while a chain extends from the stone structure up into the sky, anchoring a small planetoid in place. Figuring the pink hedgehog might know something about this, Shadow asks her what is going on, to which the girl, who introduces herself as Amy, explains that the small moon is called Little Planet, and that a bald human came along and locked it down since it only appears for 1 month a year and he wants its special power for himself. Knowing of one kind of special power the Doc would certainly be interested in, Sonic asks if Shadow's thinking what he's thinking, and when the black and red hedgehog nods, the pair take off towards the mesa. Shockingly though, they are not alone, as while she isn't quite as fast as them, Amy does manage to more or less keep up, all the while protesting that she's not about to be left behind, not when she's finally found her prince. Not being used to such flights of fancy, as even Sonic was never like this as a kid, Shadow bluntly asks what she's talking about, to which the girl responds that her tarot cards told her she'd meet her prince today, so it has to be one of them. Truthfully, Shadow had stopped listening at the word tarot, as having spent his formative years surrounded by scientists on the Ark, such mysticism seems utterly ridiculous to him. Though, spotting this disdain on his companion's face, Sonic teasingly asks which of them has a sixth sense for magic rocks again, with this causing Shadow's brow to twitch in annoyance, though he does not attempt to refute the point. By now, the trio have reached the top of the mesa where Robotnik's chain acts as a helpful path up to the planet. Even from a distance, it is plain to see the Doctor has been busy, as much of the surface has already been corrupted by his machines and pollution, though thankfully some greenery does still exist, with the chain depositing them in one such place, Palm Tree Panic, which reminds Sonic and Shadow a lot of Green Hill, especially since, like South Island's idyllic start point, it is swarming with badniks for them to smash. This is no problem for the aforementioned pair, as with homing attacks, spin dashes, and chaos control at their disposal, no amount of meddlesome mechanical minions can stand in their way, though as it turns out, they aren't the only ones to fight, as drawing a surprisingly large hammer from seemingly out of nowhere, Amy begins demolishing robots left, right, and center, while Sonic and Shadow watch in relative amazement, having mostly written her off as a flighty airhead. However, one thing they cannot dismiss so easily is what happens when Amy hits the last of the badniks like a baseball, sending it flying high into the air, as the apex of its arc, a line of blue sparks begin trailing after it, before it suddenly vanishes with no indication of where it might have gone. Wanting to check this out, Sonic races over to investigate the place where the robot disappeared, only to find nothing. Though, as he keeps going, that same line of blue sparkles manifests behind him as it did the badnik. Spotting this, Shadow attempts to alert his young companion, though by the time he opens his mouth it is already too late, as Sonic is gone. Getting a little panicked, Amy asks if Shadow thinks he's okay, to which the black and red hedgehog reluctantly admits that he doesn't know, that they should proceed with caution until they understand more. Not needing to be told twice, Amy holds tight to Shadow's arm as they slowly approach the mystery area, though like with Sonic initially, they find nothing. All the same, they do not change their pace as they continue moving forward, with the result being no line of sparks for them as they go back and forth trying to find some trace of the blue blur. Thankfully, they are not left to search for long, as about 30 seconds later Sonic runs towards them seemingly out of nowhere, still with that blue trail, and now sporting quite the story. After he vanished from view, he found himself in a green void, then suddenly he was in the same spot, but everything was different, all gross and mechanical like Robotnik had been messing with it. But that's not the weird part, since when he tried to have a look around, he wound up back in that void, only to appear in some crazy overgrown version of this place, and then after running a bit more, he arrived back here. Furrowing his brows slightly, Shadow calls this very strange, before telling the two children to stay here as he takes off at a run similar to Sonic's. As he had expected, he quickly acquires some blue sparks and then vanishes, with the result being, as the other hedgehog had said, a sudden change in scenery to a mechanized version of Palm Tree Panic. In order to confirm his hypothesis, Shadow continues to run, finding himself in the wild iteration of this area Sonic had described, and then back with him and Amy. Curiously, the blue blur asks if he figured anything out, with Shadow explaining that he thinks space and time are tightly intertwined here on Little Planet, so if they move too fast through space, they'll wind up pushed through time instead. Rolling his eyes, Sonic groans this is going to be that temple all over again, isn't it? To which Shadow nods, though gravely adds that unlike then, there's no external restraints, meaning they'll have to exhibit self-control, so he supposes it's time to see whether their discipline training paid off or not. Smirking confidently, Sonic grins that he's got this, before immediately taking up his running stance, only to stop and burst out in laughter when he sees Shadow about to scold him, chuckling that he really had him going there, didn't he? Evidently not appreciating this prank, Shadow grunts that he'll take point from here, with Amy following close behind while Sonic brings up the rear. To the trio's credit, through a bit of careful experimentation, they are quickly able to discover the max speed they can go without being flung through time, and so continue on at that pace for the remainder of this area. However, this just brings them face to face with a most unwelcome but not unexpected sight: Robotnik, now in a walking version of the Eggmobile with bumpers on the front. Unluckily for the doc, these aren't worth much when Sonic and Shadow can roll between the mech's legs, or just teleport behind it with chaos control, meaning that before long, he is receiving an all too familiar beating from the pair of rodents. As they do this, Shadow demands to know what Robotnik is doing here, as well as questioning whether the final emerald is on Little Planet, though shockingly, the mustachioed madman retorts that he's not here for a mere chaos emerald, but instead for the time stones, since they are this small world's secret power and will grant him unparalleled control over the past and future, along with the ability to travel freely between them, so that he may lay claim to the technology of the future and use it to establish his own empire as rulers of this planet and Earth in the past. In a scathing tone, Sonic claims there's no chance they'll let a rotten old Eggman like him take over the world, though truthfully in that moment, Shadow's mindset is more closely aligned with the Doctor's, since if he could acquire the Time Stones, he could go 50 years into the past and prevent the calamity aboard the Ark, saving Maria, Professor Gerald, and everyone else, either by averting Project Shadow entirely or destroying Gun before they can attack. Either way, his goal is clear, and so with a cold severity to his voice, the black and red hedgehog commands Robotnik to hand over any time stones he has and stay out of their way. Otherwise, he'll make his defeat on South Island look like a day in the park. Something in the way Shadow says this disturbs Sonic, because while he's seen his companion angry before, there is a hatefulness here unlike anything he's ever witnessed. Meanwhile, Robotnik is quick to flare up, snapping that he doesn't take orders from some rat, even if he is his grandfather's masterpiece. That's right, he knows precisely who Shadow is. With these enigmatic words, the Doctor disengages the bumpers and legs so that he can retreat in his Eggmobile. While still in that state of heightened emotion, Shadow snaps at Sonic and Amy to follow him, since they need to catch Robotnik. Evidently, Sonic isn't the only one worried about Shadow, as the two younger hedgehogs seem to hesitate for a moment when given this instruction, while sharing matching looks on their faces. Even so, when Shadow takes off with an annoyed grunt, Sonic and Amy follow him out of palm tree panic and into collision chaos. However, this is exactly what Robotnik wanted them to do, as when they catch up to him, he is not alone, as a pair of mechanical hedgehogs are waiting for them, one modeled after Sonic and the other after Shadow. Catching sight of their templates, Metal Sonic and Metal Shadow descend upon the trio without a word, quickly proving themselves to be just as devastating a double act as the real Sonic and Shadow, as when Metal Sonic dashes in and snatches Amy up right under the guys' noses, Metal Shadow covers his retreat, allowing the blue bot to escape with the girl while his black and red compatriot stays behind to fight. Returning to his usual maniacal bluster now that he is the upper hand once more, Robotnik cackles that he always aspired to create his own ultimate being just like his grandfather, and now he has, though instead of an artificial hedgehog, he has built a robotic one, so it's time to see which version is superior, the organic or the machine. He only wishes he could stick around to witness his creation do away with Shadow after what a nuisance he's been, but alas, he has time stones to find, so he guesses this is goodbye. With this dire pronouncement, the bald man then jets off, while demonstrating both his own innate heroic nature along with some of the protectiveness he gained from Shadow's influence. Sonic states that he's going after Amy and his robot copy. To this end, he pulls out one of his Chaos Emeralds and executes a quick Chaos Snap to get behind Metal Shadow so he can take off in the direction Metal Sonic fled. Wanting to do likewise, since he has no desire to play Robotnik's game, knowing he could be hunting for Time Stones, Shadow attempts to copy the move so he can chase after the Doctor. However, when he reappears, he is met with a sudden sense of disorientation, as in an instant, he goes from standing behind the robot to lying on his back with its metallic foot on his throat. Fortunately, since the Chaos Emerald is still in his hand, he simply activates Chaos Control once again, this time appearing above the bot to try and kick its head off, only to be met with that strange sudden shifting, as in less than a heartbeat their positions have changed, as now it is in the air with him, while its clawed hand finds purchase in his stomach. Rolling into a ball to soften the landing as he is blown back, Shadow next attempts a homing attack, though this time only the mechanical faker vanishes, disappearing without the signature flash of a Chaos Snap, and reappearing at the Hedgehog's side to repay him with one of his signature kicks. Having figured something like this could happen, Shadow uncoils and crosses his arms to block the blow, this finally giving him a chance to assess his foe without the disorientation of them changing places. Up close, the Ultimate Lifeform sees that this machine appears to be an almost perfect mechanical replica of him, down to the fact that it has a gem in its hand too, though one of a very different cut and color, suggesting its purpose is to not simply be an aesthetic match. Putting his advanced intellect to use, Shadow surmises that the most likely explanation is that this is a time stone, which would in turn explain this strange position shifting, as the robot must be using that thing to mess with the flow of time. Breaking apart with a scowl, Shadow sneers that two can play at that game, as he next activates Chaos Control's time-slowing power. However, this only lasts for about a second, as no sooner does Shadow feel time start to slow down than it is back to normal, while standing shoulder to shoulder with him as though they were passing each other in the street. Metal Shadow holds up not only the Chaos Emerald that had been in his template's hand, but the other two it had on him. At once, Shadow understands, as while Chaos Control can slow down time, the Time Stones can evidently freeze it entirely for short bursts. That is how his doppelganger has been getting the upper hand on him, since while most wouldn't be able to capitalize on this, it has his supersonic speed to allow it to move wherever it wants during these bursts. And that is not all it has, as with the 3 emeralds now in its possession, Shadow is left without access to Chaos Control, meaning if he is to win this fight, he will have to do it without his signature power, while facing a foe who has control over time itself. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.